first presentation, I'm going to talk about our spiritual callings in a troubled world. I think you all know about the things that trouble us, so I'm not going to give you a bunch of social problems. Instead, I'm going to begin with the words spiritual and calling, and then put them together as spiritual calling. We have all felt called to be a certain kind of person. For example, to be generous, to be kind, to be hardworking. And we've all felt called to do certain things, little things like take out the trash, empty the dishwasher, and big things like support our families, be loyal to friends. So there are little callings and there are big callings. And the same is true of spirituality. There's little spirituality and big spirituality. Little spirituality is when you have that momentary feeling of awe at the night sky. You go outside and you just feel overwhelmed. And it's a genuine feeling, but it kind of passes when you go inside and turn on the television. And then there's big spirituality. Big spirituality is your deepest desires, your highest hopes, your ultimate values. We could say the spirituality of your soul. Now, one way to ask about big spirituality is, what do you live for? Where do you find your sense of meaning? Or another, perhaps more stark way to ask about it is, to ask about your soul spirituality is, what would you die for? And I would suggest that most people live for and would die, if necessary, for their family. And that many people also are willing to die for their country, which is a social extension of their family. So when we put together spiritual and calling and ask, what is our spiritual calling, our soul spirituality? As I write in We Carry the Fire, it's an action spirituality that calls us to nurture, protect, and strengthen families and citizenship in a democratic society, because it is democracy which allows us to be citizens and not just subjects of government. Now, most of us pay a lot of attention to family, but most of us, unfortunately, don't pay as much attention to our spiritual calling as citizens. And democracy dies in silence. It depends on our actions that continually renew and strengthen it, just as you can't abandon a child in a forest and hope that it will thrive. I once asked a college student whether he participated in any kind of citizen-oriented activities in the community. And he replied, wincing, well, you know how it is. I'm so busy. I have classes. I have friends. I just don't seem to have time for anything else. No time for the mitigation of hunger and poverty. No time for the prevention of dictatorships or human rights. No time for the prevention of war. Taken for granted dailiness is as dangerous a threat to democracy as the overt actions of those who seek only their private interests and don't care a fig about what happens to the rest of us. The beginning of our citizenship came with the Declaration of Independence. Governments are instituted among people deriving their just powers where? From the consent of the governed. And then it was reaffirmed in the preamble to the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, do ordain and establish this Constitution. Not just we who hold public office, not just we who work for governments, we, the people of the United States. And then Abraham Lincoln's memorable words at Gettysburg, that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. We are the end game. We are the end game. We, as citizens, must work to sustain democracy or we shall lose it. And those who have died for it in the many wars and those who have lived for it will have lived and died in vain if we let that happen. Preserving and protecting democracy is a spiritual calling, along with our spiritual calling to nurture families, however family happens to be constituted in your situation.